We're smooth 98.1 FM. Good morning and welcome to Freshly Pressed. It is the Friday edition, and we've got a tag team here getting ready to lead us into the headlines this morning. And then we also expect your thoughts to come on to our WhatsApp platform, and that will be on 0809 will be where we read all the messages related to the headlines this morning. So I go over now to make special hailings to the gentleman who joined me this morning. Good morning to Joseph Obari.
I hail thee. Omas, all listeners, you're welcome to the show today.
If you
I
hail
hope
me,
it's
I
good.
hail
Yeah.
Nigeria. That's what it
You
is.
hail Nigeria.
Yeah, that's where all
If you
aliens
good
should go
morning.
to now. Good morning, AB Bozimo.
Good morning, Omats. Good morning, Joe. And good morning to all of the fantastic Friday listeners. We hail Nigeria together.
Yes, that's the spirit. So let's go on now to dig into the headlines this morning. So proceedings will begin with Joseph looking immaculate. We never know, he might be getting ready for court this morning. So we might as well tap into his expertise this morning of legalese and see how he can lead us through the Vanguard newspaper because it runs with his headline. It's an order, especially coming from the learned judges already. Local government autonomy. Supreme Court gives governors 7 days to respond to federal government suit. What's the suit about, Joe? Walk us through,
I
sir.
think it's a master stroke. Last week, the federal government took the 36 state governors to court, demanding that they should hands off local governments. And the suit actually seeks to demand full autonomy for all the 774 local governments in the country, bar the arbitrary dissolution of elected local government councils, and or ensure that funds that are credited to local governments be paid directly to them and not through the state governors, where they what's been happening is that the state governors get this fund and then they decide what they do with it to the local government. And then an order ordering the governors from creating caretaker committees in place of elected local government. In fact, there are some states that are operating solely on the caretaker committee system, which is against the constitution in itself. An injunction restraining the governors receiving or spending or tampering with local government funds. And then it's simply just an enforcement of Section 7 of the Constitution that creates the local government systems and gives powers to states to supervise, make laws, and also to supervise the local government. So that right that the Constitution gives to states is being abused consistently by almost all the governors. And I mean, it's for obvious political reasons. Whosoever controls this, you're talking about our politics is grassroots politics. So right down to the wards, you're going to determine who comes up to primaries, who participate in party primaries. So look, governors have always seen that control of the local government is crucial to them. And they do everything to ensure that they have a full grip. Now that the point is that they can still do so if they allow the constitution to operate as regards the local government. And violation of the constitution is an impeachable offense. I've not heard any House of Assembly that was raising the stick above the head of any governor for violating. Instead, they are in cohort with governors and they use them to manipulate local governments, and that's simply what they. I want to praise this administration for having the courage to stand up against this brigandage of governors and demand that the constitution be obeyed, and like local government should function as the third tier of government as intended by the writers of the constitution. It's gone on for too long, far too long. Local government workers through Norgay have fought, try to give some strength to their local government chairmen, and won some cases. But then, even then, the governors just simply, I think it's some kind of contradiction that the constitution intends local government to be autonomous, but also hands them over to the states. I think we need to really look at that aspect of our constitution and think clearly how do we want local governments to function if they have to be autonomous? Because at the end of the day, yeah, okay, the money is given to you pay it directly to the local government chairman. And he knows that his political survival is dependent on the governor. So what does he do? He gives the money to the governor later on in some way or the other. So if there is no proper check and balance that should happen, so we have to create that system. We need to really rework the local government system in such a way that it can actually function, So the legal battle is being that the federal government simply saying, put a stop to this. And where does the federal government sue any organ or any level of government is the Supreme Court. And that's why the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction over such matters. If you're suing states, it's the Supreme Court that will hear the case. And in this case, since the case was filed, the governors, of course, naturally, they are just deliberately stalling. And they are not filing any defense and so on. And what the federal government, the Attorney General did was to just demand that they should expedite the process of their response. And then within 7 days, they should enter their defense and file their processes, which the court granted them. Even though the one of the Attorney Generals of Obari wanted 15 days, the court said, no, we're not here. This is an urgent matter. We need to dispense with it as quickly as possible.
So when you talked, I smiled at some point. Okay, Abi, I'll get to you shortly. But when you mentioned when the federal government gives the money to the local government area, they give it, they return it. So I just recall the picture of giving a child money and then instantly the mother.
Yeah, the mother takes it. And then, I will keep it for you.
Yeah. So it makes at some point. So at some point, people say, if not because all the monies have been given and have been given to my mom, what is even a Benz that I cannot even afford?
Cannot buy.
Thank you.
But okay, say Joseph. Now I quickly need you to clear this for me. Maybe I'll come to you shortly. But Joseph, there's this also. In addition to this, I'd like you to throw in this. There's this comment by the Attorney General at some fora this week where he said, left for him or the federal government, they should even scrap the State Electoral Commission because they are a tool in this.
Oh yeah, they have just what they do is, in fact, people have been advocating that the local government election should be conducted by INEC, because what governors do is simply they appoint their cronies as the chairman of the state electoral commissions. And they simply, it's a kangaroo thing. They just do whatever they like, right? In fact, for falsification of results and everything happens. And you need to hear opposition parties in every state that have conducted election. They have never been free and fair elections. So I think the FAGBEMI is very, 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 very on point on that matter. That's why I'm saying the whole process, everything concerning local government, the legislators need to. These are things that are critical, that are important, that I think our legislators should pay attention to, and not changing national anthem, for goodness sake. These are critical things because it borders on a very important organ of government in the country. So change everything, look at it holistically, and ensure that local government autonomy is actually an autonomy, not a pseudo autonomy.
Joseph, your thoughts on this one? AB.
Listen, we have to decide for ourselves how we are functioning in this democracy. Our local governments are akin to counties in the United States that we said we modeled our democracy on. Over there, they have the equivalent of all elections are actually conducted by the states. So it's interesting to me as a non-lawyer to see, are we cherry picking what we like, what we prefer, what works? Yes, we must craft our own version of democracy. But as we're doing this, the local governments are not, they're not isolated in the country. They are part of the larger country. While we're making the local governments autonomous, can we, at the core of it, get down to resource control, where indeed every local government will be completely responsible for its own blossoming and growth and productivity? At the end of the day, I think that what will deepen democracy. Yes, this is not a bad way to go. And by asking for a 7-day response, we're going to get something back. I noticed something though. These interesting cases where governors and states go to Supreme Court. I think this happened when the currency thing happened. That's when the governors got up and ran to the court. I just find there are other things I would love for the governors to go to courts for the direct benefit of the people. You could argue that this local government one is one of them, but there are many other things too, and they simply leave the courts out of it. Let's see how this goes. 7 days is ticking right now to speak.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on now to the Punch newspaper. ABU walk us through the story. Climate impact Nigeria to support small island states. That's according to President Bola Tinubu. What's this all about?
The president was represented at a conference for the small island and development states that happened in Antigua and Barbuda. He was represented by the Minister of Environment, Balarabe Lawal. We are saying, as part of the larger United Nations body, yes, we want to support. In fact, it has been found that those small island states are disproportionately affected by the effects of climate change. You can imagine some of those small, beautiful islands, when the sea starts rising, it destroys their tourism, destroys their infrastructure, destroys their environment. And just based on their size, you know that they are not the largest contributors to global warming and all that. So there is an effort to refocus on helping them through this. I would even take a step back. While it's good that we are being a good international citizen, how are we helping the portions of our nation that are also affected by climate change and environmental destruction, especially our coastal regions, especially
The network seems
along the river banks? Where is that the effect when the dam in Cameroon is opened? So it's good, yes, let's go and take our place at these international conferences. But charity, they always say, starts at home. I would imagine that our credentials and our ability to state our support for the small island and developing states is burnished and enhanced if and when we demonstrate internally that capacity. That's all I'm saying. There's a gap between this external promise and the evidence we see or do not see within the country. Whatever support we wish to give externally must first be made manifest here in Nigeria. I think it's only at that point that whatever we are saying will not sound and ring hollow.
Oh, I mean, so by starting from home, you might want to see it start from places like the Niger Delta, Escravos, Focados, then
Focado,
Ogoni.
Lagos, the edge, all the areas in Nigeria where environmental degradation is ongoing. And one of the first things we should start, if we really want support, is stop this mindless burning of oil products that are allegedly stolen. Why do you burn it? Why don't you go and give it to this Dangote refinery that is importing from outside? I'm just asking on a practical basis. Carry it, if you discover it, tow it with a canoe to Dangote refinery and use buckets and put it into there. I'm just saying, why burn it and further destroy the environment?
All right, Joe, you have something to drop in the bucket of knowledge for us this morning relating to this story before we go to your paper.
Well, I think EB has simply captured it all. The climate change thing is a buzzword now in government. And of course, when these new things come, new funds come in. And so I am just worried that some of the attraction is basically for what people can get out of it and not really
Travel to Barbados and Antigua. That's the whole deal. The travel ESTA code.
That's all.
What
the real earnest, sincere interest in the climate is not there. I don't see it. I don't see that.
Let's quickly remind the listener they can be part of the conversation. It's freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. So let's get your thoughts on WhatsApp to come across on 0809 444 0981 will be where we read your messages relating to the headlines this morning. You can also catch a glimpse of what's going on youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. So we return now to pick up this daily. The Daily Trust newspaper, Joe, is this one. Federal government inaugurates committee to review intellectual property policy. It seems we're bent on sending you to court very early this morning.
Yeah, I mean, that we are even talking about this on 2024. I would say is completely just shocking, because intellectual property is such a huge aspect of law and rights also, because it's not just about the law, it's about the law, the rights of individuals to own certain property. And for those who don't understand, it's just that you can own a right to what you produce through your thought, in terms of your creative ideas, in terms of your writing, and all those kind of copyright and all of that fall under the category of intellectual property. So now you remember there was a time when our musicians practically have to go out on the street. I mean, somebody like Lagbaja stopped playing music because his work, he said in one case, he was being offered to buy his own music on the street. It was pirated. So piracy had become so strong that musicians were no longer, until streaming music online came, most musicians who depended on selling their CDs at one point simply just gave up, because as you're producing your master tape, some people are already replicating it and selling it on the street at a lower cost than what you produce. And at the end of the day, you don't get anything. So that's just one tiny bit. But there are other aspects of intellectual property that concerns government, record keeping, data management, and all of those aspects. When you give your information to government, what happens to it? How safe is what you're giving? That's sensitive information. I mean, and multiple government agencies are collecting the same data from you. How are they keeping this data? Nigerians are complaining of how the people are breaking into their system. I mean, bank accounts and so on, calling them up from where they don't know. It just means there are leakages in the system, because first of all, we don't have a central data keeping system. All of these things are supposed to be completely clearly defined by the government, and policies about them to be rolled out, so that citizens know and have that assurance. Even where the awareness is there and this law, people still breach the system. Not to talk about where they don't even exist at all. So it's very, very timely that we address this thing. And just forming a committee in 2024, for me, I think it's something that should have been done 10 years ago or more, much beyond this time.
And yes, pay cybersecurity levy, you won't pay. You are part of those who will go to court. Now,
Don't go there, off your mic.
Okay. Maybe let's hear you.
Intellectual property is actually one of the ways people get an income in perpetuity. For instance, you do a song, anytime it's played on radio, you're supposed to get, no matter how tiny it is, you're supposed to get something. You do a design, it's creative. You and the owner own that design. I'm talking architectural design. If it wants to be replicated, you should get money. There are things like that. Yeah. Anything that has to do with intellectual creativity ought to be protected. A lot of people get patents based on their intellect. They say there's a vast difference between the amount of patents filed in the US, for instance, a very innovative and creative society, and those filed in Nigeria. People sit down and just think their way through problems, patent it, and they begin to earn from that. And this is part of what this intellectual property debate and policy should address. The ability for people to be motivated to think their way through problems and earn money for a lifetime even.
See, the right of a man to eat from his talent, God-given talent, is something that shouldn't be denied that person. And it's so when you see people who made blockbuster hits, movies, and even books, and we get to see them years later on the streets, you cry for them, because it doesn't you can't relate that to the popularity of the work to the man's means of living when you get to meet them. So, Joe, as a body, as an area of study, how do we see that is it evolving properly, or we still have a long way to go?
Oh, first of all, of course, you know that the publishing industry in Nigeria has been destroyed. It's completely almost dead, I would say. In those days, if you write a book, or let's say a novel, you come up with a work of fiction, you write a manuscript, you send it to Henneman or any of these publishing houses. They have set of editors like you who sit down, go through the work, tell you what you should do, change this and that, and eventually they publish your work. Now, this is how it works. The work you send to the handyman, they take it from you. They are responsible for distributing the sale of that book, and they give you pay your royalty to you, and you get your money. In fact, in some cases, they can, if they are so strong, confident about what you're coming, they pay you some money upfront. Even before the book is published, they pay you some money upfront, and then they start marketing because they take the responsibility for pushing out this. Now, in the 80s, with the austerity measure and all those things that happened, cost of books just went up. Publishing houses were having to import the document, what's called newsprint for production of books and so on. We couldn't, or book prints mills couldn't run to produce paper for people to be able to produce locally. So we found out that it became more expensive to produce books. Now, on the other hand, people needed books. And what was the result? The Onitsha market literature thing became strong. They could get the original one copy of your book, they Xerox it. In fact, in those days, they actually just photocopy it. You could see some parts of the photocopy is not clear because the book, maybe it's a heavy volume. The photocopier cannot get to that section. They don't mind. They were just trying to bind it. They start selling it at a lower price. And people were in need of books. Of course, we bought those things, we use them in the university. And that marked the beginning of the decline of our publishing, because eventually Macmillan, Hanneman, and all the rest of them, they just died. They died naturally because there's nothing to sustain them. Now, what took the place is that people now wake up. They are the author, they are the editor, they just write whatever they write. And it's worse in the universities. And that's how lecturers, so-called professors, get to be. I'm sorry to academics, but that's the reality. So they just churn out whatever they like, go to the next printing press, print whatever, bind it, go to the National Library, get the ISBN number, and put it on the back of the band, put their copyright, whatever they have to write. And they are publishers, and they just put it in the market, and they start selling it directly themselves. So the man is the author, he's the editor, he's the publisher, he's everything. And then whatever he gets from me, that he has sold his book. And that's only, but gradually, I've seen some new publishing houses coming up. They're doing some great job and so on, but how sustainable is it? They are still battling with the challenges of newsprint and all these materials, they have to import them and all that. So it's a challenge. I hope that eventually we raise the system to the point where we can actually have publishing. And on the other hand, there is a challenge of poor reading culture. It wasn't now by social media. So how many people are actually reading? Yeah, so a few people are reading. Those book enthusiasts are always there, but how many are they to sustain the industry?
Barrister, off your mic, Barrister. It's okay. Let's move on and get some more messages in at this moment now and get in. Emeka's thought is what I'm looking at this morning, and Emeka from Ikeja says, INEC will never perform magic if mandated to handle local government elections. INEC results sheets are funny too, Emeka from Ikeja. So it just goes in responding to this current case going on now. Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo Isheri comes up with this one, and he says that the mere fact that it's taking a legal action by the federal government to get the governors to uphold the provisions of the Constitution proves that the Constitution is not working and thereby needs a serious review. Ajayi Olunilua's thoughts this morning. And we find a message in here from Abbas Oladekbo, and he says, if we're looking for what the federal government is doing for the people, the local government autonomies case is one of them. The arm of the government is closer to the people and gives the people more benefits of governance. The governors have been taking the federal government to court even before Naira change. They did not just start recently as analyzed. They took Buhari to court to stop the executive order on the local government autonomy. That's what Abbas would just chip in. Then Ibuku from K2 comes up with this one, and he says, AB is on point. We don't have the expertise on the environment or practice at home. So how will we support the island nations? Will it be financial with money we don't have for students or for minimum wage, Abi? Oh, well done, federal government. Ibukun from K2 left that message for us. So let's keep more messages coming on to 0809 444 We can also catch a glimpse of the show freshly pressed on youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Now let's go over to the Guardian newspaper where the headline here screams Disco's international customers owe NERC 97.5 billion naira. AB, this is on your court.
This is one of those numbers-rich stories. It's best to read it yourself so you can say it. It won't translate very well just listening. However, the key sentence in this is that after 64 years of nationhood, Nigeria generates 5,000 megawatts, despite the grid capacity of 12,000 megawatts for a population of 200 plus million people, allegedly. Now, they are saying that the 11 discos internally and about 4 international power discos have not paid them over 97 billion naira. They reported some payment rates of 76% before that fell down to 70%. Some will call that an A, but that is leaving a lot of money, 30% on the table. And I would say, apart from those past debts owed, if the discos and gencos and trancos and every loco you can find would simply ensure that there are prepaid meters in place, that would be one way of ramping up the revenue. Because like your phone right now, if you do not possess credit on it, you cannot make a call. So if you put a prepaid meter in place, if I do not replenish it, I cannot have power. However, I agree that energy is different from telecoms because energy is transmitted end to end. So whether I'm collecting it or not, it's being generated. There's a lot to be done in terms of efficiency. You may not have 100% efficiency, but you can go up from 70% to almost 90, 95% and call 5%, loss. I'm just saying their method, just reporting it. What is the solution? NERC is called in to please intervene. How? They have appealed to the federal government to address the persistent issue of non-payment. How? What is the plan? The story does not say exactly what they want to do. Do they plan to cut those customers off? What is the plan? So this is just another complaining story, but no solution inherent inside it. I feel one of the first steps for the smaller customers, for the larger bulk meter customers, is make prepaid a thing and stop saying people should have a hump over which they have to climb to get a prepaid meter. Once the meter is in your house, you can be the cost can be amortized over 6, 12, 18, or 24 months. So each time you buy X amount, a portion of that goes towards your payment for the meter. Let's get over this so it cannot be metered. Come on.
All right, so AB, take us run through the next story, and that would be as we wrap up now. The Punch newspaper would be it where IPOB sit at home, governors react as two soldiers killed, businesses ground as the anniversary of the civil war being marked in that region.
A very sad story came out yesterday that some soldiers who were just at a guard post were attacked and killed and their vehicles were burned. There is no reason for that to happen. Honestly, we're not a nation ostensibly at war within. So the first thing, why are soldiers all over the place? But that said, whoever they are, soldiers, civilians, police, NSCDC, nobody should be killed, attacked, and slaughtered like that. So people are saying it's IPOB. IPOB themselves have not yet claimed it. Some other people are even saying it could be other people because the area where that happened is not known as a hotbed of IPOB people. People are saying other people under the guise of the stay-at-home, robbers and thieves and other people of bad intent could have been involved. But it goes without saying that an investigation about this must be done and the perpetrators must be found and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We join the nation and specifically the families of those soldiers in mourning their loss. It is unconscionable, it's unacceptable. Our security forces are a no-go area within. On their part, the security forces should endear themselves to the population so that we have a mutual supportive environment. May they rest in peace.
Amen. Let's take messages as we wrap it up this morning. Femi from Lagos says, it is interesting that people are not seeing the Wike Fubara angle on this local government matter. And it goes on, the first question you ask is, why now? Considering that this government was sworn in a year ago. Secondly, what changed this philosophy, considering that the president was a governor in Lagos State, was a major enabler and beneficiary of the withholding of funds of local government? Was that not one of the grounds of the OBJ that Obasanjo presidency had with him when he was a governor? Well, it goes on. He reached Fubara turn now, who now won't give local government autonomy with their own money to fight. They play. That's what Femi from Lagos had to say. And then it goes on. Aisha's got a message for us here saying, see how our governors know when to go to court. Our lawmakers pass laws with speed of light. Piracy has killed our industry and livelihood. And the list goes on. Do you see how are doing things wrong and manipulating the system to give us the answer or result when it suits them? That has caused this decadence and brought us to the lowest point we find ourselves, that everyone is suffering for. Niger, we hail them. Then Abbas's message says, why question why soldiers are all over the place? We give IPOB excuse, we don't give headsmen. Nice one. So it's a wrap. So starting with AB, well, agree, disagree, where do we find you?
You know, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. You agree, disagree, hit me up at AB Bozimo on all platforms. We pray for a nation where our anthem will actually translate automatically without any effort from the presidency, the legislatures, the state governments, the local governments. The anthem alone, being the problem of Nigeria, will solve all the problems of 5,000 megawatts and every other thing. God bless Nigeria.
And to Joseph Obari, thank you for your time.
I say amen. Thanks for that prayer. Guys, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. Thank you.